Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sally Talk, where we have all sorts of interesting guests and information. I like to focus on uplifting stories as well as real stories. And this week is going to be fun. And I'm so excited because I have a wonderful comedian and friend, Stacy Dymalski, on. So I'm going to do her big intro in 1 minute. First, I wanted to say that I've monetized. So you may have gone through a 30-second ad before you got to this. And I'm trying it out. So I don't know what it was. And I'm sure it was wonderful. If it was political, I don't want you to ascribe anything. We have no idea now with this climate. Who knows who's putting ads where, but I was just saying politics-wise, I'm neutral. But anyway, just want to let you know if you noticed that, and there will be one at the end. Another exciting announcement is that I hit the over 1,000 downloads. I'm actually almost at 1,100 downloads with this podcast, considering that I haven't really actively shared it and really put it out there. I'm really excited. So I want to thank everybody for supporting this. It was something that I started and I've been learning as I go. And I know I've had sound issues. I've had this and I've that. And everybody's been really patient. And I love the feedback. So I really need, I'm calling a call to arms. And I want you to review me if you could, especially on iTunes. I need you to go into the podcast on iTunes and then go in and write a review for me. And of course, only if you like it. And also, only good reviews. No, I'm kidding. But I need reviews, and then anything else on Facebook also would be great. And if you could go like my Facebook page and like me on Instagram and all, give me some big social media love. That would be great. Follow me on Twitter. Everything's Sally Holiday and Sally Talk. So you should be able to find me. All right. So I am going to give a shout out to my own sponsor, which is me, Arbonne International. So for 40 years, Arbonne International has watched out for you and your skin and your health and your nutrition. We just recently became a B Corporation, as I've mentioned before, which means that we're transparent about where all our money goes, how we profit share, how we help the environment, how we recycle, and all that good stuff. So if you want to know more information about putting your money in a company that for 40 years has been doing what everybody should be doing now, let me know. You can find me at sallyholiday.arbonne.com. That's sallyholiday.arbonne, A-R-B-O-N-N-E, which means good things from the earth.com. All right. So let me get to my wonderful guest. I have to do a bio for her because she's so accomplished. She's been on before. She is a friend of the show. And so this is your third appearance. I'm going to have to start giving like awards, to people who have been on a lot. So Stacy Dymalski is a stand-up comic, and she's an award-winning speaker and a writer. She's performed at the Comedy Store, the Improv, Ice House, a whole bunch of comedy clubs all over the country. She is also branded as the memoir midwife in Hollywood because she is a professional story developer. And she helps people, everyone from like film executives to retirees, to write and share their stories in the form of books and movies, which is kind of how I got to know her initially. She's even given a TED Talk on that because she helped. The TED Talk was entitled Prison, A Startling Path to Creativity, because she worked with an author who wrote his book, Jacumba, right? Connection. And because he was in the federal prison. She's performed at the Hollywood Fringe Festival 2018 with her solo show, Other Side of the Razor Ribbon. And then in 2019, Hollywood Fringe Festival with her 1-hour comedy show, A Bit Much. Both of ones I saw. I loved them both. It won a Producers Encore Award. A Bit Much made the Better Lemons Best Show of 2019. So she's written several books, and like so we're going to talk about that. The books that she's written: Confessions of a Band Geek Mom, which is very funny, about being a mom of two very talented young men that are grown up, which is crazy. So anyway, Stacy Dymalski, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Oh, that sounds good. All right. I've been wanting to work on making sure my sound is good. So now, when you announced that you were going to be on, you said you just figured out how to bake a bacon in the oven.
Yeah,
Did you
yes,
not know that?
I did. Well, I didn't just learn it yesterday, but I found it out more recently than most people because a friend of mine, I saw her do it, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You're supposed to put it on top of the oven and make a greasy mess like our mothers and grandmothers have always done, and risk grease fire. Otherwise, it's not worth it." And she's like, "Oh, no, no, you can cook it in the oven and keep the mess in there." And so she showed me how, and was very simple. And I went home and did it myself. And I've done bacon that way ever since. But I've actually known how to do this for about a year. But when I was doing the promo, I wanted a funny tag at the end. I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And we'll also talk about how I just learned you can put bacon in the oven, which has changed my life. And it has. And so because now I'm eating a lot more bacon, um,
It's
unfortunately for my
very not
cholesterol.
politically correct right now.
I know. I know. I call myself a selectitarian. I won't eat beef, but I'll eat
Right.
a bacon. That's just a-okay with me.
It,
And so I
it
I thought, okay, well, I'm making bacon in the oven. I'll just mention how that changed my life.
well, it did mine too. With sons. And I read somewhere that if you want to get them out of out of their rooms when they sequester themselves in the rooms, you throw bacon in the oven, and then they all of a sudden they make their way out
Yeah,
into
I
the
do.
kitchen. Hey, what's
They
going
do. And
on?
the dog comes out, if it seeps out of the house, the neighbors come over. Hey, hi, what you doing? I always thought if you're dating somebody and they come over to your house, even if they're not there to eat, you need to put some bacon in the oven. Just because they'll have that good memory association. Wow, I don't remember why, but I really liked being over at Stacy's house. I don't think I want to see her again, but I really like being in her house. I don't know why.
What
Bacon.
about what about realtors? They should think about, I know sometimes they put cinnamon rolls in the oven. Maybe they should throw bacon.
I think bacon, yeah, cinnamon rolls or chocolate chip cookies is another biggie. They bake those. Yeah, I think they're missing the ball here. They should just be putting bacon after bacon after bacon. And eventually, like in 15, 20 minutes, it's cooked. So you're just going to have to keep doing bacon in the oven. And what they should do is they should put a platter of cooked bacon out instead of a cookie
Right?
or or a cinnamon roll. It'd be like somebody walks in and they pick up this platter and shove it in their face and go, bacon?
Well,
That is,
but like I said, it's going to be like it's politically incorrect now. And it's funny because I've been thinking about that. You and I have talked about this about comedy because I had a comedy experience back before children, and but back in the days when I was doing stand up and stuff, really anything went. I mean, anything. Comedians could get up and say anything, and nowadays it's funny. There seems to be a bunch of comedians that are push back, and saying, you know what, we should be able to say whatever we want. With Ricky Gervais
uh,
and Dave Chappelle. Both of us enjoyed the Dave
oh,
Chappelle. Oh my gosh, so funny. So, do you feel any of that, or do you feel like you're just gonna, say what you want and let the chips fall where they may? Do you worry at all about it?
I don't. I'll tell you this. I consider it, but I don't really worry about it. And back in the day, before I had kids and was really doing a lot more comedy than I do now, I I definitely didn't worry about it because I don't think somebody like Sam Kinison or Andrew Dice Clay. Not that Andrew Dice Clay was a little too much of a misogynist for me, but I support that he can say whatever he wants. Those types of comedians today, I don't know how much they would, the audience just would not respond. It's just become a very, very politically correct climate, which is why I love Dave Chappelle because he walks a fine line. He says things that at first when he starts down that road, I thought, oh my God, is he really going to do this? But then what happens is he supports, he gives you a conversation that makes sense. You may not agree with it, but you're kind of like, I can see how you would think that, you know? And so I think comedy has changed it's not as much of a set up punch. It's more of a dialogue with the audience. It's more like a funny TED talk, or a conversation that that the comedian offers to the audience, but then tells both sides of it. Because like Chappelle will ask a question and then he'll answer it for you, because obviously the people in the audience as a group aren't going to answer back. So I think it's evolved in such a way that it's a new kind of thing. And comedians who just do the setup punch, the kind of the Don Rickles kind of stuff, it's just not as popular as it used to be. There's still some of it out there, but it's just not the stuff that's really getting the attention. All the Netflix comedians, they're all telling stories,
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Jeffries does 20 minutes in his 1 hour 20 is like his 70 minutes Netflix special. He really just tells like 4 or 5 stories, one right after another.
Right.
He's not telling jokes, and then there's funny elements in those stories.
Well, there were always. Sorry, I have a dog too. They're always like Ellen DeGeneres was always like that. She was telling a story, and then she'd weave anything inside, in and out, and it was always so funny. But yeah, I think it's true. There's a participation element with the audience, because they're definitely participating, because even if they're horrified, they're like, oh, they feed on that. Oh, come on. Like that was Ricky Gervais in his Golden Globe speech.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, come on, you on it. Oh, come on, you asked for it. You're the one. Hey, you. And he actually played off of their reactions, and it became a conversation between the two. Yeah. Whereas before it used to be joke, laugh. But he actually is going to react. So it's almost like it's happening in real time, which he probably planned for.
Yeah.
It's planned for the horrifying, the people's reaction.
It's a more sophisticated form of comedy for sure. And it strikes more at the heart. So what you're trying to do as a comedian, really more as a speaker who's funny, is you're trying to engage rather than just entertain. Because what happens after, for example, you see Chappelle, whether it's on Netflix or live, I guarantee you, whoever you've watched it with, you go away talking about it. Whereas, when you just see a comedian who just tells one joke after another, especially if they're unrelated jokes, one unrelated to each other, you may go, oh my God, that guy was so funny. I loved it when he did the joke about, the milkshakes or, the muscle cars. And then that's it. And then it's like, all right, so anyway, where do you guys want to go get a drink? Or where do you want to go eat? Or are we done for the night? But it doesn't continue on after that, the discussion.
Right.
Wow.
You're in Hollywood.
I am. And
that's all right. We're doing this via Skype, and that's Hollywood, man. Welcome to Hollywood.
It's coming your way right over Burbank. It's going right over the sign. And it'll be right over your house in a minute.
That'll be funny. Yeah. Welcome to Hollywood. What's your dream? Yeah. It's helicopters and
very close.
Yeah. It's very close.
Anyway, I think the difference now, it's a conversation taking the listener on a journey rather than I'm just going to be a court jester and entertain you with some funny jokes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's really important that we laugh at ourselves. It's so important that we laugh at ourselves. And I know, you and I are around the same age. We grew up with everybody making fun of each other. They made fun of each other relentlessly. There were the Dean Martin roasts, and there were, I remember Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart would always get on the Tonight Show when they were on either political party, and they'd tease each other and they'd make rascally comments. It was funny, and that's the thing. It's like all of a sudden we weren't laughing at ourselves. And we need to laugh at ourselves. It's really important.
Well, this political climate, I think it right now makes it tough, because normally when political jokes are, there's truth to them. That's why they're funny. But now there is so much at stake, because we have, I don't want to get political, but, we have a president who's doing things like, wants to drill for oil in public parks or whatever, that kind of thing. And so you can joke about that, but then you stop and go, hey, wait a minute, I don't know if that's funny, and then what you do is, because the stakes are now so high politically, it's hard to poke the other side, because what you're doing is poking a hornet's nest, either side, either way. And it makes it a little more, it's like saying, hey, your baby's ugly. Wait, that's not funny. Even if my baby is ugly, that's not funny. And so it's kind of got a little too serious. And I'm not, I mean, everything is cyclical. We're
Yeah.
going through this now, and at some point it will end, and then we're going to, pendulum will swing too far the other way, and then we'll be making fun of everything in sight.
Well,
You know,
I think, yeah, because comedy is the saving grace. I think comedy is the thing that saves us, because if we get too serious about ourselves, and it'll be the last bastion of free speech, where you'll be able to, and everybody will come together on that. They'll all agree on that they're able to say whatever they want. They're able to say whatever they want, and you don't have to go see them. Don't see them. Don't watch their show. They're comedians you like, and they're comedians you don't like.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, there's the TV show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, hits on that a little bit, because we've seen in past episodes the Lenny Bruce character, who constantly gets arrested from stage for saying things that are protected by free speech, yet he still was arrested. And I'm hoping that could never happen again. I mean, who knows? But if it's funny and people laugh, it's doing its job, as long as it's not, I guess, I don't know where you draw the line, because that's a slippery slope if you do.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see where this is all headed.
Yeah, no, it is. It's going to be interesting. I think it's an interesting time, because when I came out to Los Angeles, comedy was big. Where there were open mic nights at Mexican restaurants.
Yeah, everywhere.
And it seems like that's kind of happening now. There's a lot of open mic. There's storytelling. There's all sorts of different things going on in different places where they're kind of opening up to that. It seems like.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned there's open mic at Hollywood Fringe this year.
Yes,
Is
they're
that
going
right?
to do.
Yeah.
They're going to do an open mic at a venue at the Hollywood Fringe this year, and I'm hoping to be one of the hosts of that. I think what the format is it's pretty typical. You're going to get 5 minutes to tell a story. It's going to be, I'm not sure which venue it's going to be at, but it's going to be at one of the Hollywood Fringe venues, and it'll be at night, rather late. Hollywood Fringe shows run, from 10 a.m. till midnight. I think the last show at any venue is midnight. And so it'll be it'll be probably 8, 9 o'clock on every night. So I think what it is that people are realizing that the storytelling is the thing. The storytelling and the character is the thing. And so there's a lot of storytelling venues all over town year round. And that seems to be growing more than open mics. And I love it, because back in the day, like I said, when I was doing comedy before I had kids, I was a storyteller. I did lean towards telling, like when I do a 5 to 8 minute set, I am telling one story for the whole time. Back in the day, club owners did not like that. They wanted you to do jokes. And so I wasn't very popular. And I didn't get to go into all of the clubs, because they would be like, yeah, you're not that funny. But what it was is the audience was totally engaged. They may not laugh at every other word that came out of my mouth, but they laughed, and they were just staring at me, totally engrossed in what I was saying. And I love that. And they would come up to me afterward and go, oh my God, you were so funny. And in the beginning I would think, really? Because you hardly moved. You hardly said anything. You hardly laughed, and now they won't ask me back. But they would be like, oh, you were my favorite one tonight. And I'm like, really? And it wasn't until later that I figured out it's because they totally enjoy a story more than they like being barraged with a series of unrelated jokes. They can relate to a story.
Well, it's funny. Storytelling, I always thought, was kind of like singing. You get up and you sing a song, and you don't know if you did a good job until the end.
Yeah.
When you do comedy and you do little jokes here and there, jokes through it, you're kind of getting encouragement, because you kind of feel their engagement. But if you tell stories like that, it's true. You don't get that, laughing would be good. I'm such a good audience member, because after doing stand up now, I'm always like, ha, 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 ha. because I just want to encourage them. And especially if I like them, I definitely want. So I got kind of famous for my laugh. When I was doing improv, I used to get famous. They always knew when I was in the audience because I'd be in the back, because I wanted to encourage them.
Right. Right.
So that they'd feel like they were on, and
Yeah.
it was good.
Yeah. Oh, I think comedians in the audience are the best and the worst thing for a comedian on stage, because I've had comedians like in the back by the bar go, I'm a couple minutes into it and I haven't really got that big laugh yet, and somebody in the back will go, "You suck," and they think you're being funny, but it's not, definitely not. And so that kind of comedian you don't want in the audience. But somebody like you and somebody like me, I'm the same. And I like to sit in the front. I don't like to hide in the back in the dark. I want to sit in the front where they can see the whites of my eyes.
Yeah.
And my big smile on my face, even if I'm not laughing out loud at the moment.
Right. And then they pick on you though.
Yeah,
like they thought we were on a date. We went one time and they thought we were on a date.
Yeah. Well,
which is fine.
We know how to toss the ball back if they do that. So it's not like we're mortified. And I do remember that time. I think we were the only people sitting at a cafe table right at the base of the stage, right at the apron of the stage, because everybody else wanted to be in the back beyond where the spotlight could hit them. Yes. They would just be from the stage shadows, yes. Silhouettes of people in the back. But no, we were right there in the front.
And I don't want to take the stage. I don't want to do anything that tries to take over the stage. It's not my set. So you gotta throw the ball back, Well,
yeah, and sometimes it's that when they say something to you, you come up with something in your head and you're like, oh, this would be a perfect setup. So you throw it back, and if they're smart, they get it, and then they'll get a big laugh, which is great.
Mm-hmm,
so
right.
I've done that before, and I've had comedians come up to me afterward and go, oh my God, can you be in every audience in which I perform? That was awesome, So
I think the other thing about storytelling is that it does make you unique. It's difficult for someone to steal any of your jokes from you. If you get up there, because I know when I was doing stand-up, it was kind of a common thing for actors because they couldn't break in and get their SAG or AFTRA at the time or whatever union card, and they couldn't get somebody to come see them because they weren't in anything. And so what they do is they buy jokes and then put together a set and then do open mics and then invite people to come see them. So it wasn't really their jokes, and it wasn't, they bought them or whatever. And then also there was always like someone could hear a joke, and there were famous comedians used to sit in the back and would listen to young comedians and steal their jokes. That was a known thing. So with storytellers, it's kind of hard to steal. It's kind of hard to steal a whole story from a comedian.
Yeah. It's the
Makes
same.
You unique.
Whether you speak or you write the story, because I'm also a television and movie writer. And people have said before, aren't you worried somebody's going to steal your ideas? Because, I do send scripts out for consideration, and I'm like, no, because even if they did, they can't steal it verbatim because it's copyrighted material. So I don't even worry about it. But even the idea, I don't worry about it because no one can tell that story like I can. No one. And I can tell it better than anybody because it was my idea.
Right.
So I really don't worry about it. I mean, there's always cases of similar stories coming up. Like, for example, I have seen 3 different comedians completely unrelated to each other. I don't think they even know each other. But over the years, recently, I've seen 3 different comedians do a set on putting together IKEA furniture. Now, see, just telling you that makes you laugh. Each one of those, they were funny, but they all looked at it from a separate point of view, and you couldn't say he stole my idea about putting together IKEA furniture, because an idea is not, you can't copyright an idea. Mm-hmm. But what they did was they had the idea and they talked about their experience around that idea. That's the difference. And so, I think that if one of those comedians saw the others act, they wouldn't care because it wasn't anything like theirs. The only common thread was it was about putting together IKEA furniture. And they were all extremely funny because I think any comedian, if you told them we need 3 minutes or 5 minutes on putting together an IKEA desk, it would be funny. It would be funny.
Right. Well, that's just like plane travel. I mean, how
Yes,
many you always can tell when somebody's working out new material because they'll do their new material, and then at the end, if they feel like it's not going well or whatever, they always pull out the old standbys of flying on an airplane. There's always those kind of standbys of that they know everyone will relate to, and it's funny because it's their take on airline travel.
right.
Everybody
And it,
everyone's flown. So it's funny. So that's why I
yeah,
think
that's
this,
the
that's why I
key.
think that story, yeah.
It
No,
has
go
to
ahead.
be relatable. That's the
Hmm.
key. Whatever you're talking about has to be relatable. And if it is relatable, you don't even have to have laugh out loud funny jokes because they're with you. They'll just be nodding their heads with big smiles on their faces. And afterward, that's when they tell you, oh my God, that was awesome. You know, even
Right.
though they didn't.
And that's where you're bringing in there's only one you. And so your unique look at it is going to be interesting to other people because
Right.
it's you. And that's what also I love about comedy too, is that there's plenty of room for everybody because it's really showcasing your unique talents.
Yeah.
And
That's,
it,
that's what I love about it
yeah.
too. Is that I used to, when I was a kid in school, I would tell these stories on and on and on to my, classmates or my friends, and they would laugh, and I just got used to it. I just thought that happened to everybody. And then when I got into college, I went to a club, and I saw for the first time in San Francisco, and I thought, oh my God, I can do that. So I started doing it. I just got up on an open mic and started doing it. And I think anybody is a storyteller because, for example, the reason that you say we all have a point of view, we
Hmm.
all have a perspective, and it's just as good as anyone else's.
And it's just it's interesting because it isn't theirs.
Yes.
So they're going to
Yeah.
be interested in it, because they want to hear how somebody else thinks. It's just got,
Right.
which is cool.
One of
So,
the routines that I do that just kills every time is I have 8 minutes on shopping at Target. 8 minutes on one experience about shopping in Target. And people are on the floor about it. And I just and there's a couple of jokes in there that I they're like little life rafts. Because if I try something a little bit different this time, because I do, you don't want to. I always elaborate on different things, even though it's the same set, because you get bored otherwise. But if I think, oh, that didn't work, I might be losing them. I always have like what I call free floating life rafts of comedy where I can get to that and I will tell this joke. And it's not even a joke, it's just a funny experience in Target, and they'll laugh every time. So
right.
I pepper it with for sure laughs. But in between those for sure laughs, I try new things. And sometimes I get a brand new for sure laugh unexpectedly, which is why I always tape everything I do
Yeah.
because you never know.
Right. Well, and I think that's the things that people don't don't realize is that that comedians do tape everything, and they literally will micromanage the words so that to make sure they'll hear how they said it this time and how they said it that time, and it really does make a difference. One of the best things I ever heard was the shorter the setup, the funnier the punchline. And it always makes me laugh when I hear somebody tell a story and they get a great joke, and then like a close friend, or I had a boyfriend that told this crazy joke, and it was a funny joke. And then we'd go to the next dinner party, and I'd go, "You should tell that joke," and he'd go, "Oh yeah," and he would lengthen the setup
Uh,
because he was like, "Oh, I got their attention," and then he would drag it out, and he would start telling about how with the clothes the people were wearing, and completely in the wrong direction. And every time he would tell the punchline, people started not laughing at all. And then it was like, no, you gotta. The shorter that setup, the funnier the punchline is a miracle, a miracle recipe.
hmm
And people don't realize that there's a lot to it. So when people think, well, I never could do that, it's like, no, actually, you'd be surprised. There's definitely a skill set,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah, and
know?
that's how I make the bulk of my living, is through story development, teaching people how to be storytellers in their own right, and that not to necessarily be comedians, but to write their own books or to write their own speeches, or to I've even helped companies um, uh, develop their brand story, where how the company got started, because there is a story structure that has to take place in order for our brains to kick in. It's science. It's not like, oh, maybe this will work, but it really is. There is an art and a craft and a structure to telling a story in a way that people want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've devoted my whole adult life to the study of that. And I still keep learning. I still try new things that I think, well, this is kind of outside the box, and it works. And it works, or it doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't. But,
Well, and also the audience shifts, because I think now they've been saying, we've heard all the time the short attention span, but it's really a misnomer. It's not really true anymore, because people will I'll listen to a 4-hour Joe Rogan podcast on meteors hitting the earth. I don't know why, but it's fascinating to me. So I'll listen to it. We'll go through 60 episodes of Breaking Bad, so I don't know if I believe that the attention span's so short. So now it's like we've got an audience now that binge on TV shows and they go for long stretches. So, when the audience you have to adapt to that too, and trust the fact that if your story is interesting enough, they will stick with you.
Yeah. I think you can make anything interesting as long as you know how to tell a story. I was at a story, like a story slam, a story open mic, and here was the premise of this. So anybody could sign up to go on stage and tell a 3 to 5 minute story. But here's the thing. You had to pull a topic out of the hat. So it would be like, you pull out building IKEA furniture, or shopping at Target, or driving in LA traffic. It's like an improv game, but it was long form, and you had to hit certain elements. So it had to have a beginning, middle, and end, and turning points in between, and it had to end with some sort of closer that the people would go, aha, and it is harder than it looks. People think, tell a story, I don't even have to write anything on beforehand. Yeah, I just get up and, well, I can do that. And one of them, then one of these story slams I went to, then you got judged, like on American Idol, and then there was a winner and a runner and 2 runner-ups, and there were actually, this was in Salt Lake City, there were actually prizes that were just like a gift card at a local coffee house, or they weren't big, but the winner got the story crown or something. I don't remember what the winner was called, but they were crowned, and they got this crown, this literal crown for their head. And then they had to come back the next time and bring the crown, because it was the same crown that just went from person to person to person. And if you didn't show up, you had to send the crown with somebody else. And if the crown didn't make it back, you were banned forever. You couldn't come back and tell a story anymore. And at least the couple of years that I would participate in this, when I could, that same crown nobody ever did not bring back the crown, because nobody wanted to be banned from being able to participate in this.
Do they have to defend the crown? So they wear the crown and defend it and try another round to see if they can keep it?
Yep, they could. And sometimes it worked.
Cool.
Sometimes it didn't. Or sometimes people just said, no, I just want to, pass it on to the next person, so, and if you didn't, then you could be a judge for the next time if you weren't going to actually compete. And the other thing is, it got really popular. And so there was a sign up, and I think like 100 people ended up showing up at this little club. And so when it got really popular, there was no guarantee that you would sign up and be able to get on, so then people started coming early and lining up around the block. It became a big deal. But the whole point of this, the whole punchline of this is, I love the idea that you are expected to tell a long form story based on a topic you are assigned, and do it in using story structure. Like, you can't just get up there and ramble. You can, but then you don't
win the crown.
you don't win the crown. No.
That's cool. I love
Yeah,
that. See,
I know.
I think the audiences are would love stuff like that. I think
Oh,
I
they
can see
did.
how audiences would love stuff like that now, and especially since we're kind of primed from American Idol and from watching all these like contest shows now. You want somebody to get up there and blow everybody away. You know,
Yeah.
we're kind of, that's what I mean. It's like there's storytelling, and then there's also knowing the audience and where the
Right.
audiences are now, and
Yeah.
it is, that's interesting. So let
Yeah.
me talk about, I want to talk about you have a movie that's being shot right now. What's
Well, it
that
just
about?
finished. In fact, after I'm done with you, I'm going over to Sherman Oaks to look at some of the meet with the editor, the director, and the producer, and look at some footage. Um, it is called, and I wrote it. I'm the screenwriter and one of the executive producers. It was shot in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's done being shot. It's called Everything Has a Home. It's a poignant drama about two young girls, ages 12 and 9. One is from an affluent family, and one is homeless and uh, lives with her mother in the family car. And it is right now. It's a short. It's an 8-minute short as a proof of concept. But we're working on making it a full length feature. I'm writing the full length feature for it. And the reason it all came about is there is an acting studio here in town called Deborah Lemon Acting Studio. And Deborah Lemon is a good friend of mine. And she is an actress who's been in lots of things. I mean, she's the kind of person you would look at and go, how do I know you? For example, she was in Deuce Bigalow, American Gigolo with Rob Schneider. She was the narcoleptic girlfriend when he takes
Oh
it,
wow.
those
Uh-huh.
women. She was in Point Break. She's been in a bunch of stuff. Anyway, she is one of the premier acting coaches now in Hollywood. And what she does is, I think once a quarter, maybe a few times a year, she does these on-camera workshops with her students, anyone who signs up for it, and she hires directors to come in and direct these on-camera workshop scenes so that these students have something for their reels, because some of them are brand new students, some of them have been in the industry for years. And I went to her and I said, I'd like to be considered as one of your directors for this. And she said, great, I would love to have a woman director. Right now, they're all men. And I said, but there's a caveat. I would like the students to read my material, my original scripts, because Sally, I have drawers and drawers and drawers of unproduced material, of screenplays and pilots. And so she's like, even better. I mean, that's the holy grail. We just can't afford to pay people, to write custom material. And I said, well, what I want is I want them to do my custom material. I want to direct it, and I want to be listed somewhere as an executive producer. So if it does go anywhere, I'm attached to it. And so she's like, great. Well, then what happened was she has students all over the country that she Skypes with, or she travels and has workshops all over the country. She has some students in Shreveport, Louisiana, two girls, sisters, who are 12 and 9. And she was going there to work with them. And she got this bright idea, said, what if we went to Shreveport and shot a short with these two girls, these two actresses? And I said, great. Let me go find something I have that I can maybe rework that would work. And she told me what their strengths were as actors. So I wrote to their strengths, or modified something I had to their strengths, came up with this script. The only thing is, she said, there is a budget, and I can't unfortunately tell you what that is, but it was a pretty good budget. And she said, you will have to come. We'll pay it, but you'll have to come to direct it. And I said, I can't right now. Why don't you direct it? And so she said, gosh, I'd love to. It's a great script. Are you sure? And I said, yeah, I've got plenty more that we can shoot later somewhere else. So she directed. She went with our producer, Megan Miller. When she got involved, that really took it to the next level, because Megan makes things happen. And so she got on the phone. She lined up a production, everything. She lined up the DP, the AD, the sound guys, everything, craft services, all of it. So it was a professional shoot. They were so efficient. They got in, they got out, they got it done. And so we are actually going to submit this to festivals because in this case, it's not just scenes, it's an entire short film from which these young actresses can now take scenes and add to a reel. So this was kind of a prototype, and it worked. So far, so good. It worked. So we're going to get this short finished in post-production. We're going to submit it to some festivals, and if it gets into anything, which I'm sure it'll get into something, then these young actresses on top of that will have credits, like IMDb credits plus festival credits. So it's a prototype to see if it works. And, everybody gets paid, not the actresses because it's an on-camera workshop, but it's a professional shoot, and it's a way for them to bump up their reel. And so far, so good. The thing I really love about it is this particular production was all women. It was a women lead development team, director, writer, producer, and there are 3 actors in it, and it's all women, a mom and 2 daughters.
Oh, that's great.
So Megan and Deb, Megan Miller was the producer. She went on the shoot. Deb Lemon, the director, obviously she was there. So these 2 women are bossing around everybody on set, and it was nice that they were the ones, large and in charge of I think, I wasn't there, but I think it was an all male production. I mean, Megan just, met through phone with the film commission there and got the best people she could for the price she wanted at the time she wanted them, who was available. And everybody turned out to be great. But I think there were no women. They were all men.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But the ones in charge were the ones who were involved. But, I was thinking that's what we really need right now. When Little Women came out, I mean, Little Women's one of my favorite books. It's been done 4 times, I think.
No, it's been done 9 times.
Movies?
Yes. Greta Gerwig edition was done ninth one.
It's time for new women content. Can we write a story with 4 sisters?
I know.
That's like...
I know.
In this day and age,
everybody was like, "Oh my God, it's the best movie!" And I wanted to like it more than I did. What I had trouble with is that these women in the mid 1800s are kind of spouting verbiage and ideas that were way too progressive for that time. And what I would love to have seen is for somebody like Greta to take that story and update it to today's world, because we're still going through a lot of that stuff. It doesn't have 1850.
But it's funny. But then also conversely, the most powerful person in the world at the time when that book was written was Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that foreign to have a woman in charge of everything. She was the Queen of England, and it was when England had India, and it was the British Empire. Yeah, it was the British Empire, and she ran it. So they did have a figurehead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not in a vacuum, There have been women that have been in charge, of things, and maybe in America, not so much at the time, but, I just think, why can't we just have a new story? It could be 2 sisters. Well, no, it sounds like this is. I mean, it sounds like this would be it would be a new story about women. There we go,
Yeah. And it addresses homelessness from a child's point of view. So, just briefly, the older girl is walking down the street and she notices the younger girl is in a car by herself. So she passes by, and then she goes to the store, and then she comes back and the girl's still there. So she knocks on the window, and they talk a few minutes through the window, and then the young girl lets the older girl in, and they have a conversation in the car. And through that conversation, it changes a point of view. They each are changed and different people as a result of that conversation. And that's basically the 8-minute short, which I want to expand into, a 90-minute movie to bring attention to the fact that homeless doesn't mean it's that weird guy with a beard and sleeping in a dirty blanket, on the curb. It's also people, because the girl, the reason she's sitting in the car is because her mom's at work and school is out. And so what do you do when you're a single mom who doesn't have a place to live and you've got a 9-year-old child? You put them in the car and tell them not to, I'll be back. And so that that is the conversation that I want to come out of this. And these girls do an amazing job of it. I've seen, I haven't seen the footage. I'm seeing it today, but from the people who have seen it, they're all very impressed. So I'm excited to see it, and I'm hoping we can use this as a way to figure out a way to make the movie the 90-minute version of this movie.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to know more about Megan, your wonderful producer, I interviewed her on Sally Talk, so you can go back and find Megan Ford Miller.
Yes.
I'm just saying. I was just throwing that out there, just a little, that my finger's on the pulse.
Yes.
So tell me about the pilot. What's going on with the pilot that you've mentioned?
I also have a pilot script that is out there. It's called Caroline in the Dark, and it's a dramedy. It's funny. I thought it was a comedy, but then my manager read it, and he's like, "This is a drama that's funny." And I'm like, I don't know how to really market this, so that's their problem. But it is about the story of a 39-year-old divorce attorney, a woman who happens to be blind. And she wasn't blind from birth. She is losing her sight through a retinitis disease. It's a genetic disease where, over time, adults lose their eyesight prematurely. And it's actually more common than we think. Anyway, she's been married 15 years, and she catches her husband cheating and just can't find it in her heart to forgive him. So she is the breadwinner. And she's in California, and she knows, as a divorce attorney, she knows what that means. So she decides to give up her practice and go back to school to become an ethics teacher in high school in order to avoid paying alimony. And it's a dark comedy along the lines of Dead to Me, or even a little bit The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Not as many yucks as that, but the comedy comes out of all the irony. The irony of the fact that she's going to teach ethics to avoid paying alimony. The irony of her husband, soon to be ex-husband, is a famous photographer, and he works for a photography magazine, but she's bored by his work because she can't see it.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting.
She doesn't like kids, yet she's going to teach at high school. So there's a lot of irony involved in it, and that's where the comedy comes from. But the word-to-word script is I guess would be considered a drama. So I'm not sure where it lands, but
wow,
it's getting good response, and so far nobody has stepped up to make it, but everybody likes it, and that's kind of as a screenwriter in Hollywood, that is how that works. I have also a feature out in consideration, and people pass, but they give you all kinds of glowing remarks about it, or it's not what they call a hard pass. They're just like, no, and they don't offer anything. It's always, oh, I wish we could do this, but we've got something similar in the works, or I love this, but we're just not taking new material, or whatever. So
yeah, I'm sure they have a lot of blind divorce attorneys.
Well, that's great. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is so unique. And if I have to sit through one more panel at some event where I hear these producers whine about, oh, we need more women's stories. We need more stories with diversity. We need more stories for people of color. We need more stories for people who are disabled. And I'm like, oh, my God. I've read so many of them, and I've written some of them, and everybody's just like, we can't find them. Really?
Right.
Really? Not looking hard enough, people. Just not looking hard enough.
It's always been like that. And then it happens, and then they're like, oh my gosh, that's great. Wow, what a surprise. I never knew.
It's your overnight success.
Yes.
Where have you been all this time? I've been knocking on your door. You just haven't been answering.
So, well, hopefully what'll help is that you have a new manager. That's exciting.
Yeah. Yes, this thing with the ATA, the talent agents versus the WGA, I'm in the WGA, that has been gold for WGA writers, because what has happened is when we all had to fire our agents and managers, the WGA stepped up and said, okay, well, we're going to help you find jobs, and we're going to help you find new agents and managers, because they came up with a code of conduct that any agent or manager company agency could sign, which meant that they were not going to do packaging in the way they've been doing it before. Any agency that signed that was free to work with writers again. Well, all the mid-level and boutique agencies said, yeah, we're in, we'll do it. And so then the Writers Guild did like this speed dating thing where they said they did an online deal where they introduced the agencies that signed with writers who are looking to be repped, because that now was all of us. And it allowed for people to get new representation, and I think that's a good thing. The only holdout right now is like the top four: creative artists, ICM, who else? The top William Morris and one more. Anyway, they're the holdout, and that's where the Endeavor.
Yeah.
Or no, I think actually Endeavor did sign. No, it's one more big one. One more, if they call it the big four. Mm-hmm. But anyway, everybody is getting repped again, and these new managers are, like in my case, have, it's a whole new, let's get reacquainted, or let's get acquainted, and they read all your stuff and they're energized because you're new to them. So my manager has sent out, which again, I wish I could tell you, it's a feature script that I wrote to some pretty big people who are considering it, which I think is exciting. It's the script is the movie version of Hakamba Connection, which was what you said at the top of the show, was the book that I mentored a federal prison inmate to write his story on illegal immigration. Well, I optioned that and I wrote the screenplay version of it. And that, it's funny, when you have representation, then they weigh in on what you're giving them. And in that case, he's like, yeah, this title's got to go. Can't be a Hakamba Connection for the movie. Nobody can say it, and if they do, they say it wrong.
I butchered it at the beginning.
Yeah, everybody does. So he goes, I'll give you a day to come up with a new title. So I went away and thought about it, and I came up with a bunch of options, and I said, here's what I think. Which one do you like? And he and his assistant picked Checkpoint. So the movie version of the book is now called Checkpoint. Incidentally, I should mention my manager's name. His name is Barry Crost, Krost, and he's in Beverly Hills. So he and his assistant Melanie are just gold. I just adore working with them, and I think they're going to do great things for me, and I'm really looking forward to the future to see what comes out of this.
That's awesome. That's really exciting.
Yeah,
that Checkpoint sounds great.
I know. What a great name.
One word. That's what they always say, right? One word.
Sums it up.
Yeah. It's like, what does that mean? Yeah, that sounds great. I can see it now. And the winner is...
Yes.
Checkpoint.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes. From lips to God's ears,
yeah,
Sally.
I can see it now. All right. And then the last I wanted to say, you talked about how you're going to be for the Hollywood Fringe, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to for the open mic. And then also too, you're teaching courses. You were so busy.
I am. Somehow it all adds up to a living. I can't live on one of these one things yet, but it all adds up to a comfortable living. Yes, I'm going to be teaching it. I'm so excited about this. Spring quarter at Pasadena City College. I have 2 courses through their extended learning program. The first one is on March 7th, which is a Saturday morning from 10 to 1. I'm teaching how to turn your story into a book. And then I'm also teaching on Saturday morning, March 21st, 9 steps to self-publishing your book. So the first course on the first Saturday on the 7th is story development, how to write your story. And the second course on March 21st is, if you're interested, how would you self-publish that story into a book? Or I'm also going to talk about how you find a publisher if you don't want to self-publish. So these are both high-level overviews of all the steps to take to do what it is you want to do in terms of getting your book written and published. And from there, you can decide if it's for you or not. It's one day. It's not every week, for multiple weeks. It's not that intensive. It is just an overview of what needs to be done, and then you can decide what you want to do from there. I've actually have taught this in the past, a longer version of it at University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and I've had people who have taken it, and then they go, I'm so glad I took this course because I realize now I don't want to do this. It's more work than I thought. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to write a book. I'm just going to spit it out. I'm going to self-publish it, and I'm going to be the next Stephen King or you know, or um, just the next big thing in writing, and that's just not going to happen. So this is gives you the heads up. I think the university has it priced at $49, so it's a deal, and it's at a great time when there's not a lot of traffic to get to Pasadena. Saturday morning, you'd be driving there between 9 and 10. I think you'd get there in no time.
So I've taken I've been to a 1 day course with you, and then also your online course, which was great.
Yes.
And part of the reason the podcast happened was because I did that. And then I realized it was the same thing. Like I was thinking, I think I want to talk, and this way I'll talk and do the podcast. And then I feel like the book will come from that.
It will. You have so many stories already that you can come out of this. I mean, come out of your podcast. It just depends on which story you want to focus on. But you've got a lot of material already through this podcast. But yes, you are one of my students, and we're still
I highly recommend it. It's great. It's great even just as a self-awareness, just to really, some of the stages and the steps that you put people through, it really gets so you get to know yourself. I feel very strongly about getting to know yourself.
Well, yes, because then you can be an authentic writer, and that's the key, is authenticity. And sometimes people, when they want to write their story, they don't want to talk about the bumps in the road in great detail, or the warts and all. But see, that's the part that people want to hear, because it does two things. It makes you relatable, because people go, oh my gosh, that happened to me, and I can't believe that happened to somebody else. Or what it does is it makes people more if it hasn't happened to them, because they say in their heads, oh my gosh, I never knew that it was to this degree. I never knew somebody felt like this to this degree. So authenticity is everything. And if you're just going to gloss over it, you shouldn't even bother writing the story, because nobody's going to read it. It'll just upset them because they wish you would have gone deeper.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really, really true. That hearing that somebody's been through something that you can identify with, or to hear just a completely different, live your life through, in somebody else's shoes, just to kind of get an insight. I like that too, that you want to hear what it is, their thoughts and feelings, because then it always ends up coming back to being human. And there are a lot of things you can still identify with, even if their experience was different. But the thing is that we're also unique, and I think we're thirsty for this. Like, I think we really are hungry, or whatever. I think we really want to hear other people's story right now, which is kind of full circle to where we started. I think people really want to hear somebody else's story, and they just think it's really interesting. We've seen a lot of pretend stuff. And I think now people really want to hear each other's individual story.
Yeah, I think that's why things like NPR, Ira Glass's This American Life, and a lot of that has come out of radio, because television and theatrical, they always looked at it as an escape from the real world. But what they don't realize are the stories that really did work. Even something as out there and fantasy as, say, The Wizard of Oz. The reason that movie was it just resonated, because the whole idea of searching for what you want and going in this big circle and going, like be careful what you wish for. You don't want to live here anymore? Okay, boom, you don't live here anymore. And then all she tried to do was get home, and then realizing after she got home that she never really lost what she was looking for. She had it all along. That in general resonates with everyone. And so it was just wrapped around a fantasy story. So what Hollywood and TV is finally realizing is that even when we think we're having them escape, we are teaching them. We are showing them something relatable that they can take away and apply to their own life. And once Hollywood realized that, that's when, reality TV started, and a bunch of other things as well. It's not necessarily escapism. It's being able to relate. We just want to relate as humans. And storytelling is the best way to do that.
Yeah. I heard an interesting story about It's a Wonderful Life, where Jimmy Stewart supposedly had a lot of trouble because he had just back from the war. and he was
Yes.
really in the war. He was a
Yeah.
fighter pilot, and he had PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to Lionel Barrymore, who was Mr. Potter, evil Mr.
Yeah.
Potter, and how they had this conversation about how he was like, why should I do this? It's not important. I feel like being an actor isn't important. I just, after everything I've just been through, and there was this horrible war and everything else, and here I am, this actor, I just don't feel like it's important. And Lionel Barrymore said to him, how could you think of anything more important than going into people's hearts and minds and telling them a story that will help them in their day-to-day life?
Yeah.
And that completely turned Jimmy Stewart around. And then that was it. And then he was completely, he was fine with what he did for a living. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. And he was going through that during the filming of that movie.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that story, but that's a great story. And so true.
Yeah.
So true. I've had both as a speaker and an author and a screenwriter, I've had people come up to me after they've seen or heard something I've done or read it and say, oh my God, that touched my heart, or that changed my life. And literally, I've had people tell me I've changed their lives, or I've changed their way of thinking, or whatever. And it's all for that. That is just that. I can't even tell you how rewarding that is for me. And it doesn't happen for everything I do. And even for some things, it may just be one person, but it's worth so much to me when somebody says something like that I have made that connection and in some way impacted their life. That's it. I'm done. I'm good. I'm golden.
I heartily agree. Yeah. It's like, I think I always say it's important for us to take care of ourselves. So we hold up our end of the whole life thing. But if we can turn around and share what it is that we've been through and to help somebody else, then that's gravy,
Yeah.
That's the best.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it all worthwhile.
I've had, I don't even know if you did this. You might have, but I'm thinking not. But I've had clients say to me, I don't know if this story is any good. I don't know if I can. I have this story I feel like I want to tell, but I want you to read it and let me know if it's any good. And I'll say, I don't have to read it. I don't have to read it. I know it's valuable. It's worth it. It's just a matter of if you tell it in a way that people are going to want to engage with. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
If you ramble on and on and on, never getting to the point, then no. But it's not the story that's the issue. It's how you tell it. And that's something you can learn. That is something anybody who is invested can learn.
Mm-hmm.
But is your story good? I don't have to read it. I can tell you right now it is. It is. It totally is.
Right.
Nobody has a story that isn't worth hearing because it's their experience, their point of view, their pain, their joy. And that's the stuff that we just glob onto as human beings. We just want to relate.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the more we know each other and the deeper we go, the more we'll like everybody. Because you'll understand their how they look at things, and then you can kind of understand from their perspective. And then, then the more we realize how much more we have in common and all that good stuff.
Right. In my mission statement on my website, part of my statement says, and I'm paraphrasing, but storytelling breeds compassion in a world that desperately needs to understand the commonality of being human. And that is so true. That is so true. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Because it's hard to be mad at or punch somebody who your heart goes out to. So that you may not agree with, or you may not do the things they did, but you get why it happened, why they are the way they are.
Yep, that's so true. Well, on that note, I think that's a good way to end.
Okay.
So I want to, unless you can think of anything that we didn't hit on, I think we took care of everything. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being on. I'll put all the links for everything on my Sally Talk Facebook page and also on the actual content of the podcast itself. Or you can always we can contact you, Stacy Dymalski. You're on Instagram. You're on Facebook.
Right.
I'm and all those places.
I'm at Stacy. I'm at Stacy_Dymalski. So if you just get on any social media and search on at Stacy_Dymalski or Stacy Dymalski, all one word, you'll find me.
Yeah, it's DY.
Yes, DY.
Malski.
Yeah, DY.
Not dim, not DIM. DYM.
DY. And I have no E in my first name. STACY.
That's right. No E and a Y. So thanks so much for being on. All the best of luck. I'm so excited for you. There's so many all our memories are coming in Facebook on all the things we've done together now. So we're in memories of Facebook because now we've known each other a while, which is great. And I just love that you come on my show. I really appreciate it. Wish you the best of luck.
Always.
Be on again when all the good things start. We'll say we talked about it here and it became movies and all that other stuff. So thanks so much for being on.
I love it.
Thanks everybody for listening. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. Please, like I said, show me some social media love and like all of my stuff. I'm Sally Talk on Facebook, Sally Talk on Instagram, Sally Talk on Twitter. And also too, I'm excited to announce that I'm going to start a private group for all my listeners, my guests, anybody who wants to be on it. And it's going to be talking about being healthy, mind, just everything healthy and taking good care of yourself in this journey of life. So thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk again next week.